Okay, okay.
Hey, that is my name here because I have chosen it. I choose to leave behind that which I was. I'd rather work than stand around gossiping. See you.
I should have a drink with Tujen later. Greetings.
Shave. I gotta go shave.
Not the most pleasant of things, but it'll have to do for now.
Harry Potter, open world.
Okay. I gotta go shave. BRB. BRB.
S.W.Frost is now live streaming part of exiled digital artist in so PSN is back huh.
Times out of already. The sound of evil love to fall tonight. For the waste and evermore. The scattered soul we free the hell, bodies wasted on the shore. In the hell's domain, watch them as they go. And once again we know. So now the wings of a dream, far beyond reality, all alone in desperation. Now the time has come. Lost exile you never find, lost within my own mind. Then hearts and all our
Hogwarts Legacy was a dream
souls so
game for a
far
lot of people,
away.
a game many had waited
We
years
wait
for.
for
The Harry
the
Potter franchise hadn't
day.
delivered much in terms of video games since the early 2000s. It
For
was
the
some of its
lights
underrated
so
movie tie-in games.
wasted
Some of them.
and
Hogwarts
gone.
Legacy, as of June of last year, had sold north of 30 million copies, a total that most publishers in this
Sure.
industry dream of. But for Warner Brothers, it doesn't seem enough, as they've already given indication that its sequel, that went into full development recently, will incorporate live service elements. This push is what has brought upon the destruction of this AAA games industry. Success or failure, publishers want recurrent consumer spending, no matter a studio's expertise. These executives are wanting to take these big gambles, and what it means for us gamers is lesser products. The damage inflicted is not on a short-term basis either.
Oh, brother, please.
We're seeing studios being flooded with talent leaving in droves as they don't have to work on live service slop. It's exactly what has happened to a studio like Rocksteady and a number of other single-player studios forced into this goldmine rush. PlayStation last generation dominated due to their focus on phenomenal single-player, narrative-driven experiences, and this generation it's been all about live services, with very little success to show for it. Financially, Sony may be fine, but in terms of quality content created this generation, the results have been dreadful. But this risk for many publishers is worth it, because just hitting on one of those live services means consistent revenue that lifetime could exceed the investment made into these risky service games. But for gamers, it's having to sit back and sort through minefields of absolute garbage and waiting longer than ever for sequels or new games from once beloved studios that no longer have the desire or talent to match the standards of a generation ago. The live service push has been a virus. But this brings us to Dragon Age the Veilguard, and this number, 1.5 million players in its first 2 or so months, while EA expected 3 million. The game underperformed, and the big thing about 1.5 million is that it didn't sell 1.5 million copies, it engaged, and that means that this number has been inflated a bit by Electronic Arts, who obviously isn't revealing the actual number of sales. But all indication is that BioWare underperformed here. And we talked about this in a separate video, but we're already seeing some of the damage that has been inflicted on the BioWare team that remains. Some of that was the game director of the Veilguard leaving for a better opportunity. She said that she did what she set out to with BioWare, and I just find that takeaway absolutely insane, because it looks like BioWare is pretty much just in name only at this point, and Dragon Age as a franchise is dead. And as somebody, you know, creative in this industry, feeling that you accomplished something, I just find that insane. If you compare that 1.5 million figure with any of the other sales figures, for the
we have at
franchise,
last
Dragon Age
discovered the
Origins,
vile
Dragon Age
intentions of
1,
the Illuminate
Inquisition, even
cult.
the Mass Effect franchise, they were
Coordinates
selling
locked.
1 million copies in its debut.
Help
The
pod
gaming
thrive.
industry has changed a lot in the last decade. There's more people playing video games than ever
Engaging
before.
orbital
I'm sure
thrusters.
Electronic Arts thought the Dragon Age franchise was going to grow, and that did not happen. So I can understand some of their dissatisfaction, but also
Orbit
understand that they contributed
synchronized.
to this chaos. But yes, the Dragon Age director is now working at Wizards of the Coast on a new Dungeons and Dragons video game. She said this was a dream job she couldn't turn down. And look, I think she looked at the room, she realized Dragon Age is dead, there's nothing else, and her contributions were probably going to be her going to another EA studio, and that's something she didn't want to do. So yes, it is a little bit of damage control, and the reality is that Dragon Age the Veilguard was not good enough. And we have heard this statement coming from BioWare. This is something that was immediately given after my video, and it was the fact that BioWare said, as we announced in August 2023, we are changing how we build games to meet the needs of our upcoming projects and hold ourselves to the highest quality standards. A core team at BioWare is developing the next Mass Effect game under the leadership of veterans from the original trilogy, Mike Gamble, Preston Watamanuk, Derek Watts, Parrish Lay, and others. And keeping with our fierce commitment to innovating during the development and delivery of Mass Effect, we have challenged ourselves to its corporate speak about delivering the best experience to our fans. We are taking this opportunity between full development cycles to reimagine how we play BioWare. And if this wasn't clear, BioWare fired a lot of people that were responsible for tracking this developer. It's actually been said that the entire writing team is now
Point me to the enemy.
Sending down equipment package. Gas strike incoming.
Ah, koliko moraš biti retardiran.
Request approved. Reinforcements have been launched.
Democracy has landed.
Diver, you are moving outside the mission area.
Found something! Bug outpost spotted. Prepare to exterminate. Found something.
Gas strike incoming.
Found something. Found something.
Gas strike incoming.
Dropping a pin. Found something.
Gas strike incoming.
My luck. Found something. die! Found something! Found something!
Gas strike incoming. Held data lost. Sending replacement. Request approved. Deploying reinforcements.
Point me to the enemy!
Reinforcement budget running low. Request approved. Deploying reinforcements.
Yeah. Oh,
Joining the fray.
I don't know.
Sweet liberty, my arm!
Sending down equipment package.
Tagging map. Found something! No pain, no freedom. Found something. Dropping a pin. Tagging map.
Firing gas strike.
My life for Super Earth!
Terminate outpost range. Sending down equipment package.
Hellbomb arm! Clear the area!
Hive structure destroyed. Gas strike incoming.
Dropping a pin.
Helldiver, you are moving outside the mission area. Gas strike incoming. Terminate hive structure destroyed.
Tagging map.
Mission at 20 minutes remaining.
Found something! Dropping a pin. Objective located.
Gas strike incoming. Deploying equipment package. Gas strike incoming.
Injury? What injury?
Democracy delivered.
Tagging map. Bug outpost.
Outpost destroyed.
Dropping a pin. Bug outpost spotted.
Firing gas strike.
Hell bomb arm. Clear the...
Terminate outpost destroyed. Sending down equipment package. Firing gas strike.
Bug outpost spotted. Prepare to exterminate. empty.
You may proceed to extraction when ready.
Tagging map. Found something!
Proceed to extraction when ready.
Mother!
Remaining. I repeat, 5 minutes remaining. Sending down equipment package.
Dropping a pin.
You may proceed to extraction when ready. Gas strike incoming.
Tagging map.
peka. I kad mu brao onaj jezičak.
No, to je rekao juče. Nisam ga shvatio šta je rekao, ali rekao je da nešto ne valja.
A noće drugo. To je jezičak ovo nabrao. A nosi mu lijepu brao ima. Ima ne, samo ima još jedna. Ali jezde, ovo je obični kurs. Jedan nađu, jezičak. Brava na jednu stranu, jezičak u času dođe. O Bože.
Šta je sad?
Čika!
Šta treba? Makaze, kakve makaze?
A ne, no, pokušaj prilaz za sebe, kad uđe u domać.
Super destroyer leaving low orbit. Emergency extraction shuttle deployed. ETA, T-minus 1 minute and 30 seconds. ETA, T-minus 1 minute. ETA, T-minus 30 seconds. ETA, T-minus 20 seconds. ETA, T-minus 10 seconds. This is Pelican 1. I have visual on the extraction zone. This is Pelican 1, preparing for touchdown. Pelican 1 preparing to depart. Shuttle launch in 20 seconds. Extraction complete. Pelican 1 beginning ascent. Democracy prevails once more.
should help keep the bug population in check.
Bum 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 bum.
The siege upon managed democracy continues.
Pam 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 pam. Halo. Dobro jutro, kako?
Jesi ustao?
Da, hvala. Ja se stoješ u 5:30. Slobodno pitaj.
Pa i mi smo već isto tako pola 6. Evo, hoću da pravim palačinke, pa ako želiš...
Doroškova sam, hvala.
Dobro.
Hvala, kuma, ponuzim po čaršiju. Hvala.
Dobro,
Hvala.
važi. Ajde.
Prijatan doručak.
Ćao.
Kuma. Hvala ti.
Don't let your family get murdered. Spend your extra cash today.
Let's play.
Yeah, I still don't like it. There it is.
Divers across the galaxy are fighting for
Helldiver.
every inch of territory. Where will you join them?
The fuck is the SS doing here?
And I do trust, I will say this, I think that Mike Gamble, what he has said so far about this sequel is everything that you want to hear. I don't know if this is going to end up being a great game. I don't know if Electronic Arts is going to ruin it with some of the stuff we're about to get into, but I am a little bit more hopeful about the project right now. But also concerned, obviously, because BioWare hasn't put out a good game in, what, over a decade now? That's deeply concerning. They're 0 for 3 in my eyes. But yes, Mass Effect 5 is still years away. It hasn't even actually entered production. It's in pre-production 4 years after an official announcement. This is why Electronic Arts, they've been giving us these little teasers, and a lot of people have said over the years, are we even going to see this game? And right now it remains to be seen. This studio, this game could be shut down the coming years, especially if progress isn't good enough in the eyes of Electronic Arts' executives. But it has also been noted that now BioWare is under 100 employees, because this statement was damage control with the fact that they restructured and they laid off a lot of the talent that was responsible for the Veilguard. Consequences, people. These are consequences. And this is what it has been said. Dragon Age: The Veilguard's writers and producers laid off as part of BioWare's restructuring. And some of the notable departures is BioWare's restructuring has led to the termination of the Veilguard's lead writer, Trick Weeks. He worked on some of the original Mass Effect Dragon Age games, and I think he was responsible for one of the most controversial characters in Veilguard. They are now gone. Lead editor Karen West Weeks, I think that's his wife, they left as well, or they were fired. Narrative editor Ryan Cormier as well, and then BioWare producer Jennifer Shaveri Cott, associate game producer Daniel Steed, a senior product manager, project manager, senior system designer, and then senior writer Cheryl Chi, who wrote Dragon Age's Leilana, Isabella, Blackwell, and Harding, and cinematic designer Derek Wilkes were both moved to EA Motive. So yes, there have been consequences from Dragon Age: The Veilguard, and the people saying that this game was actually successful and Electronic Arts just has enormous high expectations, I don't believe that. I think Electronic Arts definitely contributed to the chaos with their live service push all those years ago, and then they changed their minds. But at the same time, BioWare, this isn't the same studio that put out those amazing, the amazing Mass Effect trilogy, Jade Empire, KOTOR, and so on and so forth. The golden age of that studio, which was almost 20 years ago at this point. But it is worth mentioning now, Electronic Arts has discussed why they think Dragon Age: The Veilguard failed, and you've heard some of the things I've talked about earlier on this video about live services, so you know the direction that this is going in. And it is one giant, big, fat-ass lie. EA suggests Dragon Age: The Veilguard might have sold better if it was a live service, so what does this mean for Mass Effect 5? And I think the big problem here is Mass Effect 5 isn't the only problem. It's all of Electronic Arts if they have this mindset. This says a lot about maybe Battlefield, maybe Apex Legends, and we've already seen some of that indication with Apex Legends, as it seems like the player base is lowered and EA has gotten more greedy, which created controversy last summer. But this is specifically what EA said in a recent investor call. Obviously, Dragon Age: The Veilguard might have sold more copies and made more money for EA if it had been a live service game, the publisher's top press appears to have suggested. In order to break out beyond the core audience, games need to directly connect to the evolving demand of players who increasingly seek shared world features and deeper engagement alongside high-quality narratives in this beloved category, Android Wilson, the CEO, said. He did continue. Dragon Age had a higher quality launch. Did it though? I mean, these reviews were obviously a little bit higher at launch, but they have come back down to reality. A 79 is fine. I wouldn't say it's high quality, it's fine. And 71% critic recommended, that's not great. And player rating has been much lower in all review metrics. So I think there was definitely, this isn't a high quality launch. It shows that the BioWare talent that was around, they weren't good enough for what this franchise used to be. And that is going to be the measuring stick. And also the measuring stick of a game like Baldur's Gate 3, which in many ways feels like a spiritual successor to what Dragon Age Origins was doing all those years ago. But as we go on, Android Wilson said that Dragon Age had a high quality launch and was well reviewed by critics, the critics that got review copies, and EA limited it at launch, remember that, and those who played, and that's not true. However, it did not resonate with a broad enough audience in this highly competitive market. Now it does continue. EA appears to be suggesting the game should have stayed as a live service after all. Realistically, let's look at actual reasons why Veilguard was off-putting to a lot of the gaming audience. One, those preachy clips, yeah, bad word of mouth. There was also the cartoonish art style, big departure from the previous entries in the franchise. That was off-putting. The lack of choices, play styles, you really couldn't even be that evil in the game. That is another big factor. Access media and the fact that EA and BioWare controlled review copies and who got access, another big factor. A number of YouTubers didn't get that early access that a lot of other publishers usually do so for them. But the review copies that we did see coming from YouTubers like Mr. Matty Plays, SkillUp, really said a lot, and they really set the tone for this game. And yes, it did contribute again to bad word of mouth. Say what you will, but nowadays people aren't looking for the coverage from Kotaku and IGN. That is legacy media, that is of the past. Without getting into spoilers, the storytelling for this game was quite messy. There was a bait and switch that I don't think many people appreciated, and the story, is from what I even saw, it didn't pick up until the later half of the game, and I think a lot of people don't want to hear that with an experience like this and the many hours that you need to invest into it. The gameplay was also criticized for its very mundane puzzles and the structure of its missions and gameplay encounters. It felt very live service-esque. Actually, that was one of the criticisms, that you could still see some of that live service DNA very much in the Veilguard's structure. Those are actual reasons why many people passed on Dragon Age the Veilguard, just a couple of many others. And none of them have to do with this game being or wanting it to be a live service. And yeah, Dragon Age the Veilguard underperformed, icing the competitive dynamics of the single-player RPG market, EA's chief financial officer Stuart Canfield said, leaving little wiggle room for how EA sees the genre's future. Historically, blockbuster storytelling has been the primary way our industry brought beloved IP to the players, Canfield continued. The game's financial performance highlights the evolving industry landscape and reinforces the importance of our actions to reallocate resources towards our most significant and highest potential opportunities. The big unspoken question here now, of course, is what this means for Mass Effect 5. Currently, BioWare has given no indication that this game will be a live service, but these fresh comments by EA execs certainly raise the question of whether it's going to bankroll another single-player BioWare game once more. And I think my prediction right now is that they're going to leave it alone for a while, and if there is any types of microtransaction or live service elements, I think it is just going to be cosmetics and stuff, but I could be wrong. There might be a giant pivot. Electronic Arts is a very greedy publisher, and you really can never say never with this company in terms of monetization mechanics or in experiments. I mean, hell, they are the ones who brought on the big loot box debacle all those years ago, and I wouldn't put it past them to try that again, maybe with a game like Mass Effect or even Battlefield. But the big thing is, this is the guy we're talking about, Android Wilson, who runs this company. He earned $25 million despite the company's layoffs. And if you look at the chaos with a game like Dragon Age the Veilguard, he is responsible. He is the head honcho, and he faces no consequences for the chaos that he's brought to BioWare. He has overseen this studio, and I do think that a lot of people need to understand that this game originally, it was called Dragon Age the Veilguard, was Project Joplin. It was under Mike Laidlaw, and the project actually sounded very interesting with its narrative prowess. It was going in a very different direction, but then EA put a mandate down that this was going to be a live service. But after Anthem, they changed their mind, so the game was rebooted a couple times. Project Morrison is what we ended up getting, which was the Veilguard, and again, I think most of the gaming audience was dissatisfied with the product that BioWare put together. And yes, BioWare seems to think that just because the game came out to mediocre reviews, it accomplished something, because most games that endure chaotic developments like this just never see the light of day. And I suppose that's an achievement, but I don't think it is personally. Anyway, we did see this. The next Battlefield game has also been teased. We got this little mini teaser. It doesn't show off much, but it definitely shows a direction change for this franchise. From Battlefield 5 to Battlefield 2042, I have a more detailed video coming in maybe the coming days talking about this. But Battlefield feels like an actual Battlefield game based on this new footage. Battlefield 6, again, the destruction is very much there. You have soldiers that actually looks like soldiers. But the big thing about this game, I don't trust that it's going to stay like this. I don't trust that a couple of months after launch this is going to turn into a clown show like Call of Duty has become, with its cosmetics and all the crazy stupid shit with its monetization. And the big thing is, Electronic Arts has already indicated, even with that title, that they're going to pull off some stupid shit. When they were talking about the new Battlefield game back in May of 2024, the way that they were talking about the game, Android Wilson said that it's going to be another tremendous live service. Nothing about the actual quality of the experience or anything, but he was talking about the live service, and he even talked about some of the opportunities that they have to push further monetization mechanics in the form of ads. Yes, ads in AAA games. This is the stuff that they want. They're going to push for more monetization down our throats, and that's why it makes me nervous for games like Mass Effect 5, for Battlefield, whatever else is planned from this company. And he said this at the time about advertising in AAA games. He said advertising as an opportunity to be a meaningful driver of growth for us. We have teams internally in the company right now looking at how do we do very thoughtful implementations inside of our game experiences. And yes, it's noted here that 2020's UFC 4 included full screen ads for the Amazon Prime TV show The Boys, and yes, a decision that had to be walked back because of massive fan backlash. And Electronic Arts, notorious for their scandals with monetization, and I'm sure we're going to have another big one in the future with this company that will need pushback like we've seen in the past. But the big thing is that Respawn Entertainment is also under Electronic Arts, and there's always worries about them. But that's why I do have faith that Battlefield 6 is probably going to be a lot better than Battlefield 2042 and Battlefield 5, because Vince Zampella has done he's done magic work with whatever he's had over the years. The Star Wars Jedi games were fantastic, Titanfall as well, Apex as well, but there needs to be mentioned the fact that he doesn't have oversight in terms of monetization. That is decided by the executives at the top. We've already seen Apex Legends last year ran into a massive scandal after they tried to add more monetization on top of the battle pass. I think they tried splitting it into two, and it was price hikes that were met to massive outrage, and the game being negatively reviewed on Steam. That is how people protest nowadays, and Electronic Arts deserves this outcry, and it makes me extremely worried for whatever is coming in the future. But yes, Apex Legends has been struggling for a while now. This was towards the end of last year. Apex Legends reaches lowest player count. Fans are worried, and recently we did hear that EA is considering Apex Legends 2.0, where right now Battlefield 6 is the priority. So apparently there's going to be some massive overhaul coming to Apex Legends in the future, because yes, they want to make sure that the revenue for this game is continuing on an upside up. How they reignite this franchise, that remains a mystery at this point. But it is worth mentioning that I don't think that the Star Wars games from EA we have anything to worry about, because they're pretty much done with them. Android Wilson has for years voiced his displeasure with the fact that his predecessor, the previous CEO at EA, made a deal with Disney. So he doesn't like the EA deal with Star Wars. He doesn't want to do anything with that. So Star Wars Jedi 3, that's it. It's probably not going to have any monetization, anything. I think EA just wants to get that out, finish the trilogy, and move on, and just take it as what it is. But yeah, Star Wars under EA is pretty much dead at this point, and it doesn't seem like other publishers have had much success with it either. But the big thing about EA's comments about Dragon Age Veilguard failing because it didn't have live service mechanics, this is some of the reactions that we got from industry people. Chris Avallone, he said EA believing a lack of live service is what makes a game underperform is very EA and incredibly unsurprising. Chris Avallone, known for his work on Fallout and KOTOR and Alpha Protocol, among many other entries. But there was also the fact that we heard from Mike Laidlaw, one of the former lead developers at BioWare over the years. He said, look, I'm not a fancy CEO guy, but if someone said to me the key to the successful single-player IP success is to make it purely a multiplayer game, no, not a spin-off, fundamentally change the DNA of what people loved about the core game to me, I'd probably quit that job or something. And he's speaking about himself, because this is exactly what happened. Laidlaw was working on Project Joplin, which was a proper successor to Inquisition. Then Electronic Arts gave them a mandate of turning it into a live service. Eventually, I believe a lot of Dragon Age team was poured onto Anthem's development, and at that point, Laidlaw decided he had enough, and he left the studio. And eventually, Project Joplin was canceled, and yeah, he continues here saying, just thinking out loud, of course, who'd be silly enough to demand something like that? And that's exactly what happened. And the game ended obviously getting rebooted. We ended up getting Project Morrison, which is Dragon Age The Veilguard. So that's why I say Electronic Arts definitely contributed to Dragon Age The Veilguard's chaos, the chaotic development over the years. And that was because of the push for these live service bullshit. And by the time that they realized that they didn't want to force this down BioWare's throats, the damage was done. It was too late. A lot of talent had already departed because they didn't want to make games like that. Now, we also heard from David Gator, one of the lead writers on the Dragon Age franchise years ago. He said, if I really dig into my empathy, I can kind of see the thinking here. Let's say you don't actually know about games. You're in a big office with a bunch of other executives who also don't know much about games. What are they all saying? Live games do big numbers. Action games are hot. And he did continue natural response. We should make more action games, and all of our games should have live services. Cha-ching, right? Then some uppity dev spoils your buzz by saying that doesn't apply equally to all games where we have an established IP with an audience that has certain expectations. You frown. You go look at their sales, good, sure, but not as spectacular as live service and action games. Profit's great, but what's the point if you're not #1 on the charts, if you're not making headlines, if the devs can't make it work? This is their failure. This, after all, is the future of gaming. Eventually, you're going to ask yourself why we, the company, even bother with those other games like single-player games. It's a question you've asked aloud before. The fans bristle, but you're not here to supply every audience what they want. You're here to make money and increase your share value, which is very much the DNA of Electronic Arts and the mission of Android Wilson. Maybe I'm being unkind. There are certainly all sorts of lessons the company could learn from a game like Veilguard. I still haven't played it, so I'm going off of what other people have said, but maybe it should have been live service being the takeaway. Seems a bit short-sighted and self-serving. And then Gator here decides to take an attack on the anti-woke crowd, which, say what you want, but the off-putting, preachy clips, that definitely contributed to bad word of mouth surrounding this game. But Gator does say, not that there's any shortage of that when it comes to deciding what a game doesn't do well. For the anti-woke crowd, for instance, there are woke games that do well and woke games that do poorly, and only the ones that did poorly did so because they are woke. There's more about them than the game. My advice to EA, not that they care, you have an IP that a lot of people love deeply at its height, it sold well enough to make you happy, right? Look at what it did best at the point where it sold the most, follow Larian's lead and double down on that. The audience is still there and waiting. And I think the truth is the audience is gone. I think the audience doesn't have faith in this BioWare, and they understand the BioWare that made Dragon Age what it was years ago with Dragon Age Origins, they're long gone. We also heard more people going after Electronic Arts. Larian's head of publisher tore into EA after the recent layoffs. This is what he specifically said. Michael Dowse, the publishing director of Baldur's Gate 3 developer Larian Studios, took to X in a series of posts going after EA, saying it's possible not to lay off large parts of your development teams between or after projects. Critically retaining that institutional knowledge is key for the next game. It's often used as an excuse to trim fat, and to an extent I understand that under financial pressure, but doesn't that just highlight how needlessly aggressive efficiency of giant corporations is? He continues going, I'd understand if they were pumping out hit after hit, perhaps you could argue it's working, but clearly the aggressive streamlining and layoffs aren't. It's nothing but cost cutting in the most brutal sense. It's always people lower down the food chain that suffer when it's clearly strategy higher up the food chain that's causing the problem. And I actually do agree with this. I think that there's been zero consequences for the management at EA and many of these other publishers. They're continuing to rise on up in this industry, and I just find it absolutely insane. And even some of the lead figures behind the Veilguard as well, as we're seeing. Dowse caps off the post with, on a pirate ship they tossed the captain overboard. Very much so. To make it absolutely clear, what I hate about the way layoffs are carried out is that they are done before decision makers know what to do with the studio, not as a result of figuring out a direction. This is consistently true. It's a short-term cost-saving measure at a huge human expense that doesn't solve a long-term problem. And I think the big thing is there's just so many problems with BioWare fundamentally. And I think that there's an expectation from the gaming audience right now, rightfully, that BioWare could be shut down any day, and they may not even release Mass Effect 5. I mean, they're 0 for 3 with games, and I think you can blame Electronic Arts for some of that, but also BioWare, their management, everything that's been going on with this company, it's just been constant chaos. And yes, a lot of that falls on the leadership at BioWare, and the fact that this studio is just, it's a shell of itself. But we did hear further from Dowse. He did take to Twitter, somebody saying the problem was that they didn't trust and respect their successful devs years ago, very much so. This isn't talked enough about. The fact that a lot of BioWare talent, the key figures that made this studio who they are, they didn't get the respect and love that they deserve from inside of that building. So the talent left and was replaced with pliant replacements who would do what corporate wanted but couldn't perform to the same level or stand up for a vision. And that's the big thing. These studios, they replace talent with other individuals that they can't match the previous figures. This is a problem with many of these franchises that have continued on for so many years. It's just one of those things that doesn't get talked about enough, and Dowse does agree. He says, I think there's an element of truth to this. We actually heard this from David Gator himself. He talked about this by the time that he was leaving. He said that BioWare quietly resented its writers when they were working on Anthem. I just find that absolutely insane, and it shows the problems within inside of that building, and why I think a lot of people look at the layoffs and everything that has happened, and they're just thinking that maybe this is the best for BioWare. Maybe it's best that they just completely destroy everything that this studio has been going on for the last decade and totally transform it. Either they're going to turn into something better,
Greetings.
Trade.
Or they're going to die. Although, obviously, some people take issue with that and saying that these layoffs, again, you're just losing institutional knowledge and you could be working on remasters and other stuff. But the big thing is that remaster subject even came up during the marketing of the Veilguard, and we heard from one of the key narrative figures on Veilguard saying that a Legendary Edition style remaster of the old games in the series is unlikely because there's maybe 20 people left at Bioware who know how their engine works, and that's not a great admission. That is not a great admission. And I said as much when this news broke in November of 2024. But yes, the takeaways from what's been happening with Dragon Age the Veilguard the last couple of days and the layoffs that we're seeing, and Electronic Arts blaming the failure on live service and not having a live service. These are some of the takeaways. Aftermath said that a lot of what happened with the Veilguard is due to the fact that it started life as a multiplayer game, particularly in the way that the hubs and the mission structure ended up working, and that very much, you can see that within the gameplay of the Veilguard. In my view, they did their best with what they had, but it was, by all accounts, quite a grueling production process. They got the entire Mass Effect team to help, and they dragged themselves across the finish line. I think there was a lot of hope that maybe that would be enough, but it didn't quite land with the base. The word of mouth around it was mixed, especially around the moment-to-moment writing, because there wasn't a huge amount of enthusiasm from the actual community. Outside certain elements, my sister platinumed that game, and they were getting hammered by, frankly, a hate camp. Okay. Look, some of this preachy stuff that went viral is very much off-putting, and well, again, they're just gonna define it in a broad box, calling it all the hate campaign. But a lot of this was rightful criticism with the preachy modern-day stuff that should not be anywhere near Dragon Age. But yes, there were other issues with the overall writing, the fact that it was very off-putting with the fact that the dialogue options were like okay. It just felt very modern, and I think that's the big problem, especially when you're comparing it to the previous entries in this franchise, in which the narrative really was powerful, and it was something that stood out, and that's not something you really could say about the Veilguard, in my opinion. But yes, they say it's a hate campaign. It was tough to achieve liftoff. That's kind of where we ended up with Dragon Age the Veilguard, unfortunately. And yes, this is what Dragon Age the Veilguard started off for. It was originally Dragon Age 4. It was Project Joplin. And I have a separate video discussing all the details of what Dragon Age 4 was originally going to be. And I'm very disappointed that we'll never see this specific project see the light of day. It actually sounded quite promising. And just to share one specific detail, it says Joplin would have also focused on heists as spies, presumably to circumvent the plans of Solus. While speaking to Kotaku, developers also mentioned systemic narrative mechanics that would have allowed Dragon Age 4 players to persuade, extort, or somehow abuse guards. And they were really leaning into the narrative stuff here, narrative options and choices and consequences. And again, I'm just disappointed we're not going to see that specific game come to light. But yes, the outcry surrounding Dragon Age the Veilguard and its failure has only continued. Again, the top comments, Chud's ruined BioWare, another one in which people will call me delusional, but a game getting 1.5 million players should not be considered a failure. This is very much capitalism eating itself and people suffering for it. And this is just pure delusion. Also, they blatantly lie right here saying that it was the biggest BioWare launch. It was the biggest launch on Steam. And the only reason why it was the biggest launch on Steam is because no BioWare game before 2020 had launched on the platform. So yes, again, just a delusional mindset that...
Dobra, trzymam streama. Oj. Okay.
The remaining BioWare player base is living in right now. We had another viral video. This one was talking about Mass Effect 5. This is a streamer, and they talked about, well, how they do not trust this current BioWare. They say, I don't think BioWare is on my side, and here's the clip.
It's just a lot. It's just a whole lot. Because now I'm in a position where I don't think BioWare is on my side.
How do you have this takeaway?
And I'm in a position now where for the first time I don't think BioWare has the right intentions.
The right intentions. I genuinely don't understand how these people don't realize that this entertainment company isn't doing that. The broad mass appeal is no longer there for this franchise. And a lot of that is to do with the political preachiness of the Veilguard and some of the other stuff that we've seen over the years with BioWare. And I understand a lot of people don't like the culture war stuff and are exhausted by it, but this was very much straight into the DNA of this game. And this did definitely contribute to the fact that this game had bad word of mouth.